I don't think it's at all a controversial statement to say this, but in my opinion, the original Resident Evil 4 is one of the greatest games ever released. It holds up really well even to this day and is considered the grandfather of the modern first-person shooter, as it was the first game to properly adopt that over-the-shoulder camera in a shooter and implement it well. Every single mechanic is intricately designed to flow together. There is not a single system in that game that feels out of place. Everything is woven together almost perfectly. And considering Capcom's track record with remakes, I don't think it's at all a surprise when I say the remake is almost, if not just as good. When the remake of Resi 4 came out back in 2023, I was a broke little boy on my MacBook that couldn't play it because it wasn't available on GeForce Now. But now, after 2 long and grueling years, it got added to GeForce and I can play it on my iPhone. And I gotta say, even with the limitations, I've had an absolute blast. I have become borderline addicted to this game. It's practically the only game I've played over the last 2 weeks. I've completed 2 New Game Plus runs, and purely out of completionist habit, am playing a third one on the highest difficulty. I cannot stress enough how beautifully crafted this masterpiece of a game is. If you're going to remake a game, this is how you do it. And while there may be a lot of cut content in this game from the original, there's so much content that's added to replace it that you never really feel like something's missing. Now you might say, but Danny, what's so good about it? And I'd say, well, that's what this video's for. I'm going to be going over the gameplay, the side content, and the story of this remake, as well as compare it to the original, and just for fun, talk about the future of the Resident Evil series for a bit, as the RE9 trailers are incredibly promising. With all that being said, what's up, siblings? It's your older brother Danny, and welcome to Resident Evil 4. The gameplay of the Resident Evil 4 remake is, in my opinion, just as well crafted as it was in the original. Starting with the combat, in the original Resi 4, while yes, you had a third-person camera and can move around freely in the environment, you still functioned with tank controls like in the games before. And while you might think that would make combat unfun, it really didn't, as every interaction was designed around that. Ganados were slower, they would attack one at a time, and would often not come in very large groups. And while you might think that made it easier as well, it didn't, because of how the game was designed. Here in the remake, however, the entire system has been redone from the ground up to function more like it does in the RE2 and 3 remake. As a result, the behavior of the Ganados has been completely tweaked to accommodate due to the increase in the player's mobility. Ganados are faster, they're much more aggressive, and they're even more plentiful. As for how you deal with these guys, the main way is the guns. In the original Resi 4, to shoot and reload, you had to stop dead in your tracks, aim, and then perform the actions. You couldn't do it on the fly. In this remake, however, you can do all that while moving, which is overall just a quality of life feature I enjoy. Besides just that, however, the gunplay is also drastically different. In the original Resident Evil 4, when you aimed down sights, you had to very carefully and precisely place your shots using just a laser sight that was placed on the gun you had equipped. This made a lot of the Resident Evil 4's combat a game in and of itself, about learning how and when to place your shots. And thankfully, this has mostly not been changed. Thanks to the game using the exact same reticle system as RE2 and 3 remake, if you are not standing completely still, the reticle will be much wider, resulting in you not being able to get a very accurate shot, and no, did I just say shot? Resulting in you not being able to get a very accurate shot and have a very likely chance that you miss completely. So while yes, the player has greatly expanded movement, they are still encouraged to think about how and when to place their shots as to not waste any ammunition. On top of that, in the original, shooting enemies in the head or legs once in the original would immediately stagger them and set them up for a kick, but due to how much easier it actually is to do that in the remake, that can now take upwards of 2 or 3 shots, which can be annoying, but I understand. On top of that fairly major combat overhaul, the knife has also had its use greatly expanded. In the original, the knife was just a tool you could use to break open boxes for resources and occasionally to conserve ammo if you wanted to finish off a Ganado on the floor. It wasn't super versatile, but it was helpful. However, the remake has made this knife an almost essential part of your kit. If you're not aiming, pressing the button to attack will now automatically swing your knife at whatever's in front of you, which is nice, but it's not just that. You can parry in this game now. Yeah, there's 2 different ways to do this. If you block just regularly, before the timing window of an attack, it'll just be a regular block. They won't really stagger the Ganados. But if you hit a perfect parry, which is a requirement in hardcore, by the way, I found that out the hard way, you will immediately stagger an enemy, setting them up for a kick, which is great. Now, you might be thinking, that makes a knife super overpowered, and yeah, it does. But the durability system balances it out. Your knife can and will break, leaving you without one for the rest of the fight. You can repair it at the merchant for a fee, but if he isn't anywhere nearby, there are also plenty of disposable ones around the map to use in a pinch. Speaking of the merchant, he is very much still around, and once again with expanded mechanics. Just like before, there are treasures you can find around the map that you can go and pawn off to the merchant for what is usually a pretty high price. In this remake, that system has been greatly expanded. The jewel embedding system now has a lot of different mechanics in place. Different colored jewels add different amounts of value, and the combination of colors within the treasure you have adds a multiplier, further increasing the price. There's a multiplier for being one color, two colors, three colors, for all colors being weird, I don't know. It turns this part of the game into a little puzzle itself of not only figuring out what gems to put inside these treasures for the most profit, but also of figuring out if you should sell your treasure now for a quick buck, or wait for later to potentially get even better jewels and make more money. For how simple it is, it adds a surprising amount to the gameplay. Aside from just the treasure system, there's also various requests the merchant has that you can complete for spindles, which you can spend on special items you can't get in the regular shop. They're fun little side things to do as a break from combat, which I personally enjoy. Aside from just gameplay, this game's atmosphere has been toned up significantly. The original game felt incredibly lighthearted for a Resident Evil game, and while there were some times that I may have found a little scary, it still felt mostly like a cheesy action movie, which was still fun, but for a Resident Evil title, the lack of a fear factor threw me off heavily on my first run. This game, while still mostly action, cranks the horror in this survival horror title up by a metric ton. Enemy designs are much scarier looking, environments that were meant to be scary in the original have been made darker and more oppressive, and overall this game, especially on your first run, will have you anxious. Even on my third playthrough as I'm writing this script, this game still manages to find ways to scare me, and in my opinion, that is a trademark of a good horror title. Aside from that, the different difficulties you can pick have different item and enemy placements as well, leading to a normal playthrough feeling completely different from a hardcore one. It's a minor change, but it's still a good one that I greatly appreciate. Now, the one I've been avoiding, Ashley. Ashley is the only part of the gameplay I think was made worse. Ashley in the original game was an escort mission done right. She always stuck close to your back, listened to everything you said, and never once got in your way. She was a dream to protect. Ashley here is not. For whatever reason, the close follow command, instead of having her glued to your back like before, now has her running around like a headless chicken in your general vicinity. It leads to her oftentimes getting in the way. I remember one time on my second playthrough, I went to parry an axe that got thrown at me, and Ashley ran in front of it, getting herself killed. Luckily, moments like that don't happen all that often, and she's usually out of the way, but she gets into a lot more trouble in this remake because of these changes. However, out of the almost 18 chapters I believe in this game, she is only with you for 5, so for most of your playtime, you don't have to deal with her. Now, that gameplay is all fine and dandy, but what about the side content, Danny? What is there to do after you beat the game? Quite a bit, surprisingly. Resident Evil has always been good at side content, but let's talk about it. This game has a stupid amount of stuff to keep you playing after you beat your first playthrough. The most notable ones are the New Game Plus mode and the hardcore difficulty. Starting with New Game Plus, it's pretty standard. It lets you play through the entire game again with all your weapons and unlocks from the previous ones. You can even choose a harder difficulty and run through the game again, which is what I'm currently in the process of doing. A cool addition, though, is that you can skip the entire opening village fight by just sniping the bell on the church. It's small, but it's a welcome addition. Aside from that, if you make an entirely new run, you can choose hardcore mode, which is basically just the original game but cranked up to 100. I when I originally wrote the script, I was lying. I am actually in the process of playing it right now, and I was right. It is hell. This is painful. This entire playthrough is painful. The Del Lago boss fight made me angry. Anyway, aside from those, after beating the game, you also gain access to different outfits you can purchase with points you got from challenges and wear them in all the runs. It's nothing major, but it's a cool little addition that adds something extra to the game for subsequent ones, and again, I find it cool. The best one, though, is if you beat the game on S+, you get Knight's Armor for Ashley, which makes her completely invulnerable. It's a dream. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. The biggest piece of side content, however, is the Separate Ways DLC. I haven't beaten it yet, but it's fairly short, at only around 3 to 4 hours, and is pretty fun, because what do you know? It's just more of the fun RE4 gameplay. The DLC follows what Ada was doing while Leon was messing around in the main story. I'll probably make a quick little video on it sometime in the future, but as of right now, I don't have any plans to do so. As much as this doesn't seem like a lot, I haven't even come close to finishing what this has to offer, and I'm over 40 hours in. So it's safe to say that this will keep you going for a long while. It's an almost absurd amount of playtime that you can get out of this single-player title. Aside from that, there's Mercenaries, but I have not been able to access it, so I will not be touching on it. Now that we've talked about this game's gameplay and content, let's go over the story. It's going to be mostly a basic plot synopsis, but even then, it's still a mouthful. So bear with me here. It won't be too long, I promise. The story follows our boy Leon Exapeel Kennedy as he's sent on a mission by the president to save his daughter from these weird people. Leon runs into a guy in a cabin, kills him. The guy comes back to life somehow. He kills him again. The house gets overrun by a bunch of other people. He does a cool roll to escape. From there on, he wanders into a village and gets swarmed by a horde of these people before they suddenly stop to a bell ringing, and he says everyone's favorite line.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Lady over the phone calls, tells him to head to the lake to get to the church, so he does, but the boat doesn't have fuel, so he deals with another pack of these hungry hippos, grabs the fuel, fuels the boat, and then gets jumped by Papa Hippo. He kills Papa Hippo, he passes out, wakes up a few hours later, oh no, now he needs the key to the church, blah blah blah, massive lake quest, this part is boring, and boom, church key. He takes it, heads to the church, and ba-da-da-da, Ashley's there, ladies and gentlemen. He takes Ashley around, runs into a cabin. Oh, look, it's my goat, Luis. Luis goes, hello, my brother. Leon's like, yes, hello, brother. Luis says, let's kill people, and Leon goes, yes. We defend the cabin until Ashley comes through with an escape, and then it starts raining, so our escape chopper can't make it. Then we have a run-in with the chainsaw people. I hate these guys. And then we get chased by the big cheese. After the chase, we run a little farther until he eventually catches up and turns into this giant monster thing. Blah, 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 long castle section, blind fat guys that hit like a freight train. Ashley runs away, Leon finds her, Ashley gets kidnapped, Leon saves her. Ashley gets kidnapped again, causing Leon to have to go on a wild goose chase to another island, leveling literal armies of people with what I lovingly call super rabies. Travels underground to get a key card to the door she's held in, has multiple run-ins with Satan's hellspawn, saves Ashley, has a run-in with Satan himself this time. Ashley gets kidnapped for the 3 millionth time. I swear to God, this girl gets kidnapped every other chapter. Leon runs off to save her again. Big Krauser boss fight, emotionally death. This one's actually sad. They did Krauser justice in this game. Leon saves Ashley for the last time, tells her to stay, which I'm gonna be so for real. He should have done every other time. Kills the big saddler man, and they escape the island and live happily ever after. That was a mouthful. But what do I think of the story, in my very professional writer's opinion? Totally. Well, it's hard to explain. In a lot of ways, the story is great. It has great story beats, great plot points, great characters, great set pieces, but in a lot of other ways, it's much worse, especially compared to the original. The original had a lot of audio calls between Leon and the antagonist, and while yes, they were cheesy as all hell, and corny, and stupid, they gave very important moments of character development between them. We got to know the antagonists. In the remake, these have been removed, and all we're left with are fragile husks of what once were. Salazar's still good, and Krauser got the major writing glow-up he oh so desperately deserved. Seriously, by the time he dies, you feel bad for this guy. Luis, as well, also got major character improvement, just like Krauser. Again, you genuinely feel bad when this guy gets ganked. They were really well done. But characters like Mendez and Sadler, you have no idea exist aside from a few notes scattered here and there, because the moments you talked to them in the original have been completely cut. It makes you defeating and besting them feel so much less impactful, because these are characters you barely knew, and thus by proxy, characters you barely cared about. In every other aspect, though, I would say this story is incredibly solid. Every area that was cut from the original story has been, mostly, replaced by new things that are just as good. You never really feel like something's missing here. But speaking of the original, how does it compare? I've made a lot of comparisons to the original in this video, so this section is going to be fairly short, but I want to talk about some notable things from said original game that got cut. I already talked about all the radio conversations being cut, but another really noticeable cut was the entirety of the U3 boss fight. That is just gone. Aside from that, things like the Salazar and Krauser fight got greatly expanded. The Salazar fight just with much needed improvement to the AI, and Krauser with a much needed expanded story and improved fight mechanics. Because believe it or not, his fight is no longer just a QTE battle. Yes, the entire section in the mines got overhauled as well, as now Luis is with you for it all. Speaking of Luis, I mentioned this before, but he's a much better and more likable character now, and he gets a lot more screen time this time around, allowing you to actually develop the proper understanding of his character before he's inevitably shanked to death. A lot of the more inappropriate lines have been cut, especially the iconic ballistic line, which is a tragedy, but oh well. Whatever, it's not huge. And yeah, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. Compared to even the RE2 remake, this is really faithful to the original source material. For the last section of this review, I want to talk about the future of Resident Evil. As a while back, Capcom released multiple trailers for Resident Evil Requiem, and I cannot be more excited. I'm not gonna lie. I'm excited. I'm hyped. I'm hyped, man. The biggest thing I'm excited for is the monster AI, as it's supposed to be very similar to the one in Alien Isolation. And Alien Isolation made me poop my pants. I can't even lie. It learns from your hiding spots and ends up checking your frequent ones later, which is really cool and immersive, and makes you, it forces you into thinking a lot deeper about where you're going to hide and how you're going to escape from a monster, because you can't just cheese him by using the exact same hiding spots anymore. I wish more horror games used this system. The monster is also harmed by light, and certain rooms, like safe rooms, have the ability to have their lights turned on, but if it really wants to, this monster can turn them off whenever he likes. Once again, I like this. It means that I can't just cheese him by running into a safe room, which, I'm not gonna lie, is my favorite thing to do in Resident Evil 8. It's amazing. It's really funny, but it makes it's a horror game. You shouldn't be able to just cheese like that. And I like that you're not able to anymore, because it makes the horror game more scary. And I like that. Aside from just that, the first and third person modes are actually going to function differently from each other. While first person will function more or less like RE7 and 8, the third person mode, to counteract the third person view, which will inevitably take away a lot from the fear factor, makes it so that while running in third person, your character will actively stumble while looking back at the monster, which is not only a really cool mechanic, but it also brings that fear factor back, as one bad stumble at the wrong time in the wrong place could lead to you getting caught. Don't worry though, as far as I can tell, movement speed is increased, so stumbling isn't nearly as detrimental. Aside from that, we have not been shown much of RE9, which I'm honestly happy about. I'd rather go in not knowing what to expect than go in already knowing pretty much the entirety of the game story. It seems like Capcom isn't trying to repeat the mistakes of their past, as after the original Resident Evil 4, as good as that game was, they went way too heavy into the action. RE5 and RE6 were horrendous deviations from their source material. And Resident Evil 8, after Resident Evil 7 returned to that source material, Resident Evil 8 went a lot more in the action direction again, and it seemed like they were going to repeat their mistakes. It seemed like the past was going to repeat itself. However, it looks like they realize this. As with Resident Evil 9, they are diving headfirst into the horror thing again, like they did with Resident Evil 7, and I am all for it. I need scary horror games again. All of the horror games that have come out recently have sucked. I hate mascot horror. Mascot horror makes me angry. It's not scary. Anyway, side tangent aside, let's just go to the outro. Thank you so much for actually sticking through this video. It is a bit of a longer one, and I do apologize for that. Not really, that was the goal, but whatever. This video took at least like 2 weeks to make. At this point, I don't know. I'm only recording the voiceover now, and this script took me a week alone to write, and I have a ton of footage to capture, so I have a feeling it's going to take me at least another week to record and then a few days to edit. But yeah, I have to record hours of footage, write the script, grab the clips, and then edit it. Oh my gosh, editing this is going to be a nightmare. But nonetheless, I appreciate you sticking around. This is my first larger project in the editing software I'm currently using, so I apologize for any issues. Hell, this is my first larger project in a while. The longest video on my channel was like 23 minutes, and it was a Michael Zombies video I made when I was like 15. Like, this is my first long project in a very long while, so I do apologize for any issues. When I say all of this was made on my phone, I mean all of it. This has not been a pleasant experience. Again, thank you for sticking around. I'm planning on having the next video out by the end of, November? Yeah. I'm hoping to have this video out by October 31st, so if you're not seeing it by then, flame me in the comments, because it means I procrastinated heavily. Anyway, until then, join the server again. I got a link in the description. On top of that, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It would help out a ton, and if you liked this, maybe check out my last one. It's a Black Ops 7 Zombies review video. I took full advantage of the open beta. And maybe, if you enjoy that as well, consider subscribing. And maybe, I don't know, having the notifications on. I don't post too often, so I promise you're not going to get flooded with notifications. And when I do, I will be keeping it quality. I have a quality standard, and I will make sure it's not just some stupid post that you got notified for. And especially with these main posts, I will be holding a very high standard. Again, the next video should be out by the end of November. If it's not out by the end of November, my absolute deadline is midway through December. So, with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time in the world of assassination.